Do you ever feel like you'd love to help change the world, but you don't know where to begin? We Are What We Do is a new movement which encourages people to change the world through their everyday actions. With its roots in East London, the movement has now spread to Germany, Canada, and even as far away as Australia. Delicious Ambitious headed to London to meet co-founder Eugenie Harvey and to ask her about We Are What We Do.
What we do is a movement which aims to inspire people to use simple everyday actions to change the world. And the idea grew out of some work which my colleague, co-founder David Robinson, did at a charity called Community Links, which is based in a very poor part of London. And David observed that people are less and less likely to become members of an organisation or a community group, less likely to have a formal involvement in an organisation. And this is something which has been studied and noted and is a big problem for the world, because it means that people like you and me don't have a means of connecting with others who share our interests or our beliefs or our concerns. So the idea with We Are What We Do was to create a movement, not a formal organisation that you have to be a member of and you have to go along at 7 o'clock to a meeting, but a movement which would allow you to be, or allow us to be part of something bigger than ourselves that could potentially make a very real difference to the world if lots of people who share concerns come together and behave in a certain way. And of course the behaviour is the most important thing of We Are What We Do, because it is all about our actions. So actions that can affect the environment, actions that can affect one another, actions that can affect our health, actions that potentially could affect, global politics, if we all were to vote and those sorts of things. So very simple things which we all can do regardless of our age or our race or our physical ability or our wealth, to make a difference to the world and those around. My background is in public relations and marketing communications. I spent 15 years working for theatre companies, and I worked for the Australian Tourist Commission, and I worked for Rupert Murdoch at a company called Foxtel in Australia. And I did a lot of communications and spent a lot of time telling the world about other people's products or services or talents. And I got to a stage where shortly after September 11, I was thinking, I've spent quite a lot of time learning how to do something and I'm reasonably good at it. But to be honest with you, I don't see how the work I'm doing day by day is connecting with some of the big problems of the world. And, I suppose I've always had a sort of little social conscience bubbling away, but I never sort of had the confidence or found a way of expressing it. And I started to think, if you've got an education and you've got a family that love you and you've got some skills, and you think there are problems in the world, really it is beholden upon you to think of a way, big or small or whatever, that you can do something, about those things you care about. So I quit my job, and I went and I said to David, I think he was quite shocked, I would like to volunteer to help you make this come to life. And I spent quite a long time as a volunteer, and it was quite scary, but I knew it was the right thing to do. And I quit my job in November 2002, and in September 2004 we produced Change the World for a Fiver.
So tell us a bit more about Change the World for a Fiver, or it could be for $10 depending on your local currency.
Yeah, the first book was Change the World for a Fiver, and I'm very excited to tell you that today we passed the 500,000 mark of books sold, which is amazing. And if I tell you, that's amazing to me, particularly because when we published it, I thought we'd be lucky to sell 10,000 copies. That was, I thought that would be a good result. And it became a bestseller kind of instantly, and within 100 days it sold 100,000 copies. And it was an amazing experience, Change the World for a Fiver, and without question the most exciting piece of work I've ever had the privilege to be involved in. We basically thought we had to overcome 3 hurdles with We Are What We Do. We wanted to create a movement, we wanted to bring people together, we wanted people to use their actions to make a difference. But we needed to communicate that in a way, so we thought we'd do a book. And we thought this book would need to do 3 things. It would need to communicate some simple information so people could find out the sorts of actions they could do to change the world. Secondly, it would have to overcome the my little bit won't make a difference. So we would have to do it in such a way that we would persuade people that lots of other people were buying this book and doing these actions and getting involved. And thirdly, we would have to make this book, we'd have to get over the obstacle that it's not cool, it's boring, it's not what someone like me does, which is what I suffered a little bit from the beginning. We'd have to do it in such a way that it did not look like the government had done it, or a charity or an NGO. We'd have to do it so it looked like Coca-Cola or Nike or Reebok had done it. And so that was the challenge. And so to meet that challenge, the obvious place to go was to the creative industries to say, how do you do this?
So how have you promoted the idea across the world?
Well, it happened, the promotion globally has happened quite naturally in a sense. The website very, very quickly became hugely popular, and I didn't realise, I hadn't worked with websites to such an extent before, but they really do enable a phenomenal viral spread. And at the moment we have visitors from 140 or 150 countries every month. I mean, really weird countries too, and they come and they send us emails and they register actions and all sorts of things. So in a sense it happens quite naturally. And then of course Change the World for a Fiver attracts quite a lot of interest from the publishing industry. So we have quite a lot of approaches from publishers and that sort of thing to publish translated and adapted editions, and which is great. And then of course the media gets very interested once you start doing that. So you know, the German publication got us the cover story on the Stern magazine, which was huge. I mean, absolutely huge coverage for us. And so it works at kind of both levels, quite at the top level through the media and through the publishing and you know, all that kind of stuff, but very also at a grassroots level. And you know, as we were saying, anecdotally, you know, I hear about you know, a child in a school who did this, and they told another child in another school, and their mother bought the book. It really is a whispering campaign, which is what we always hoped it would be, because you know, our marketing budget is about sort of 40 pence, and that is the way we want it. We want it to be a whispering campaign that people find out, discover for themselves, and pass on to others.
So it seems to have really caught on. Can you give us some examples of the sorts of successes that you've had?
What we get very excited about is the anecdotes and the stories and the way people take the actions and interpret them for themselves in their own situation. So for example, there is a fantastic woman, Diana Green, at the Inland Revenue here in the UK, and she was inspired by one of the actions in the first book, which was recycle your spectacles. And she has collected from her office more than 2,500 pairs of spectacles from her colleagues. And of course they are taken and she gives them to a charity which uses them to send to third world countries. And I mean, it's quite a sort of sophisticated process, but basically people who are losing their sight and therefore losing their potential livelihood are able to have these glasses, and you know, their livelihood is assured. So that's a fantastic thing, that she's just sort of saw something in that action.
School children have also brought some of the actions to life through animations.
And why do you think that sort of thing is so important these days?
I don't see really how anybody can read the paper or watch the news and not feel moved to think, how am I contributing? And I certainly don't think people should necessarily radically change their lives or feel that contributing actually means you need to go without or have a harder life. It doesn't. You know, if you consider your behaviour and the way you're connecting with other people and the way you're using resources, there's such simple things you can do. And I just, as I say, I just can't understand how you could read about climate change, see the atrocities that are going on around the world, read about the sorts of loneliness and isolation that people in our own neighbourhoods are suffering, and not think, how am I going to do some small things or potentially bigger things to help those circumstances.
So, I mean, you've mentioned a number of highlights, I think, but what are the best bits for you about what you do, the sort of work you're involved in?
I think it is incredibly exciting, and I feel very, very lucky that when you do work which aligns your personal values with the way you earn a living, it's a fantastically rewarding experience and very motivating, and means work ceases to be work. It is simply an expression of the things that you believe in, and it's very gratifying to use your skills for that.
What about where you personally get your own inspiration from? Have you got a mentor or a quote or something?
But there is a fantastic quote which Nelson Mandela said, but actually somebody else said it originally. Our greatest fear is not that we're dreadful and appalling. Our greatest fear is our own wondrousness and our own strength and talents, and we fear our greatness, basically. A chap at an event I went to was speaking, and he was a very moving speaker. And he said that a turning point in his life had been when someone said to him this quote. This person said, "I want to be part of something greater than the wants and needs of my selfish nature." And I thought, that is to me what, like, I wanted to be part of something bigger than what I wanted on this planet. you know. And I think about that a lot. I think about that a lot with my family and with my work and, you know, with everything.
And what do you know now that you wish you'd known when you were starting out?
I wish I'd known then that all the things that I was doing in my career when I was frustrated or disappointed or thought, you know, this is what I want to be doing, every single one of those things, those frustrations and those bad jobs, like, enabled me to do the work I'm doing now. And I wish I had understood, or I wish I had slightly more faith that I suppose things work out in the end. I just wish I'd had a bit more faith in the world and in myself and in people around me and in the journey of life.
And what kind of skills in particular have you brought from that you think are valuable?
Well, communication skills, understanding that I think the thing that people respond to most is a story, and that to share we are what we do as a story, that is the best way, and to communicate it simply and clearly, to keep to the real key points of that story, to be absolutely truthful. I think people respond and can smell authenticity a mile off. You know, I think that if you're and transparent and those sorts of things, and I think in PR, you know, there is a sort of tendency to big things up and all that kind of thing. And I think what I've learned is the power of the truth and the power of the simplicity of a story which people can understand, and I think that's the main thing. Yeah. I think the best piece of advice that I've had, which has helped me in the last few years in this work, you know, because I have gone from having a pretty sort of small job in a startup little idea to having not a massive job, but a substantially bigger job, and that's in quite a short period of time, and not with any real training, so largely making it up as I go. And the best piece of advice that I'm frequently given, and I don't always take, but I should, is to listen a bit more. And I think that is something that would probably help me a lot more. And every time I consciously do it, you know, it's amazing what you learn. But yeah, so that's my best bit of advice, and my biggest learning has been just chill out.